Stream is up. So we're going back to the historic maps of Antietam. A couple different things we're going to look at today. The first one is that while I did a rectification of the burial map last week and declared it okay, I really kind of lacked enthusiasm, and we're going to look at the reasons why right now. One of them is that while, landmarks, the North Woods, the East Woods, the West Woods, these are very important in the early battles of September 17th. And you see that while the North Woods are kind of in the right place, the West Woods, they're not too bad, but the East Woods are way off. So we've clearly got a proportion problem, and that part of that is that I didn't really pick a good reference point on the Smoketown Road over by the East Woods. The reason why I didn't pick a good one really has to do with the fact that this map doesn't seem to put the Smoketown Road in quite the right place. So we're going to go back and see if we can maybe find a better reference point. Yeah, part of it was simply that I just arbitrarily selected and said this is okay, and the problem is it's not okay. It's on the wrong side of the woods, and so that's a big piece of why the woods are off. But you see the Smoketown Road and the burial map breaks a right, runs across the south edge, and then turns back north, whereas the real world Smoketown Road runs across the bottom of the woods, then breaks up. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to open up control points. I can't move it once it's set, so I'm going to delete 3, and then we're going to enter a new control point, and this control point is going to be on the east side of the East Woods on the Smoketown Road, and then we're going to go over here, east side of the East Woods Smoketown Road, add that control point, get out of control point mode so I don't drop any more, and rewarp the image. And we'll see if maybe this comes out a little bit better in terms of getting the woods in the right places. Still have this basic issue that the West Woods is much smaller than it was back then, but I think that is actually really the case. Now the East Woods are really much closer to the right spot. Yeah, I think this is better. I think that was an improvement. So now let's launch JOSM and go back and take another look. Now while we're waiting for JOSM, I want to go over one thing. I didn't show a rendering in Open Historical Map the last time we visited here because I didn't even know for sure if Land Use Cemetery rendered. It turns out there was a small breakage in the update processing, and so eventually I did see it render. And this is what I entered, and it even actually dropped Land Use Cemetery on top of the agricultural land uses, so it's actually rendering the right way, although that's possibly accidental. On the other hand, it's really, it's in the wrong place obviously because we just readjusted this map, but it's also just kind of ugly, and I'm thinking that I want to redo this. And so we're going to, in the process of moving these to the right place, also rethink how we map these. Um, so let's go to the battlefield and open historical map. Let's zoom in on these burial plots. I had used this map fairly recently, so just to be sure that I'm getting the warped image, I'm going to come here to the cache tab of images and preferences and clear that, so that when I open this map, and actually that was the wrong map, that was Cope 1. I saw troop positions, not burial sites. Elliott Antietam burials is what we need. Okay, so yeah, I need to go clear cache on Elliott Antietam burials. And then load the image again. Okay, and yeah, they moved. But the conclusion I had come to was that the thing to do, yes, it's going to be more tedious, it is arguably going to look better. These are Confederate, so copy the tags and paste the tags. Tempting to use the building tool to just extrude these and then delete the building equal yes tag, but I am restraining myself because that creates the opportunity for an error. Going to delete this. Close enough that Jossam sucked them together. Paste tags. Move that slightly to make it a little more regular looking. Paste tags. These tags specifically say these are Confederate burials, so I am sticking to the plots without the crossbars, because the crossbars in this map denote Union burials. very close to the modern Cornfield Avenue, so we'll drop it a little short. And then drag these down. These are gonna get grabbed up by the adjacent one, so yeah, and there's a land use thing there I want to avoid intersecting. Yeah, zoom in a little. So as I said, that's in the wrong place anyway, so let's move it out of the way for now. The ones with the crossbars are Union burials. The ones without the crossbars are Confederate burials. The commas represent horses. I don't know that there is any kind. Oh, wait a minute. No, we're not doing those big surrounds. Stop that. I don't know that there is any kind of OSM tagging currently in existence that would be correct for burial of dead war horses. Interesting point of discussion. It may be that this is a OHM specific tag. That we have to come up with because we don't have one right now. As a reminder, the tags we're using, we have an end date because we know approximately when the Confederate graves were relocated to Hagerstown for the most part. Land use cemetery, name Confederate temporary burials. Start date I've set to the day after the battle because basically the burials began probably 2 days after the battle, but maybe some occurred the day after the battle, and they continued for a week to 10 days afterwards. Antietam was the bloodiest single day of the Civil War, and there were a lot of dead to bury. There would be more total casualties at Gettysburg, which was a little less than a year later. But Gettysburg was a 3-day battle, which is why we use the phrasing we do, bloodiest single day. I realize that I am not watching chat on Twitch on my phone, and I can certainly do that. And I don't see anything in there right now, but you never know. Somebody might show up for this. So I'm going to do this one more row of Confederate burials here. And I now have covered more of these than I had when I started. That's what I should do, is do the same fix up to the Union burials. So first things first, let's copy the Union burial tags. Outline this little tiny Union plot. I would be very surprised if the number of symbols corresponded to the number of bodies, because there were a lot of bodies. In terms of tagging, of course the name says Union Temporary Burial, and the end date is different because the Union burials occurred quite a few years before the Confederate reburials occurred. It was somewhat controversial, the idea that you would put Union and Confederate soldiers in the same graveyard, especially, a federal graveyard. But the state of Maryland actually originated the National Cemetery in Sharpsburg, Maryland, which is down the road from the battlefield a short distance. And they had originally planned to bury both Union and Confederate soldiers in it, but there was a substantial popular outrage. So they backed off and only buried Union soldiers, and then subsequently transferred it to the federal government as part of the National Cemetery program. So there are no Confederates in the National Cemetery in Sharpsburg. The Confederate soldiers are largely buried in a specific section of a major cemetery in not in Hagerstown. Yeah, actually it's in Hagerstown, that's right. So our goal here is really to capture the Union burials that I had previously outlined with that rather large jagged structure. We'll upload it. We'll see how fast the update processes are running at this point in time. Since they weren't working at all a couple days ago, but they have reportedly been fixed. Okay, I'm going to finish the ones down here and then delete that old ugly land use thing. We drop that a little short so that we wouldn't get node mergers that we don't want. We kept it a little bit away here for the same reason. did get merged. Unglue that. Delete that because that wasn't there before. Bring these up. Declare victory. Okay, time to delete this guy because we can no longer edit in close proximity here. So in addition to not looking ugly, these will arguably be much closer to the right place. I'll just move that into the right place afterwards. That's impossibly close to the others to be able to get the nodes in without some automatic merging happening. And this is going to be second to the last, I think. Because I think I'm very close to having captured the same area as before. Okay, yeah, we're going to do these, and then we're going to do that little pair there separately. And that pair is going to be a pain in the neck to do without automatic node merging, so we'll just offset the nodes a little bit and move them. Now, in terms of updates, one of the things to keep in mind is that OHM uses a vector renderer rather than a tile renderer, so we don't really have the same situation in terms of waiting for the tile rendering engine to catch up. So, improve site location, Antietam Battlefield, Elliott burial map, upload. And the change set is up. We do not have necessarily a tremendous sense of how fast this update's going to get pulled. You know, when I refresh, I lose 1862 in the time slider. So that did not happen right away, but it may happen soon enough that we'll look at it before we check out for the day on this stream. The other thing we want to look at today is that, and I'd flashed the COPE map earlier. Let me turn off the Elliott map. Now look at the scene. Seen something I may want to go back and change. I may have done something I really didn't mean to do. Yeah, I did do that. So, yeah. What I meant to do here was that. Delete all these tags because they're from the wrong kind of burial plot, and copy over the tags from the right kind of burial plot. There we are. And then move this all the way over to here. And we'll just send that revision up. We'll go back. Zoom out a little bit. Best way to find what we're looking for. Oh, I see them now. So 1908 COPE map. The COPE maps, and there's a number of them, there's not just one, they give us troop positions. So one of the things I'm interested in doing is mapping ephemeral data. And ephemeral data, name that we've started, or at least I've started using, got it from the Open History Map Project, which are those other guys, is data that represents transient things. The example that the Open History Map folks gave in their presentation was tracking extended sea voyage and showing the track of the ship. I don't recall precisely whether it was the Beagle or if it was something else, but it might have been Darwin on the Beagle, or it might have been Cook too, I don't really know. But we have ephemeral data here in the forms of these troop units that are located at various spots. And there's not currently any kind of tagging for this. And so I started trying to work out a system which would use relations fairly heavily. So right here, the 26th New York Regiment. Right this minute, this unit is deployed in line so it can march forward in a battle line. So I've set ephem deployment line. Arrow points to the right, and if you use the right hand rule, then your fingers end up pointing south, so that's the direction of march. Then I have a time, which I am giving in full ISO format. This is the daybreak map. So I went to the trouble to figure out what time of day daybreak is in Sharpsburg, Maryland, in the 17th of September, and it's 6:44 a.m. and I gave it 6:45 here. So arguably I should correct this to be 6:44. And then I'm going to uncorrect it because I put that same wrong date in everywhere at 6:45, and I don't feel like going through and fixing that now, so let's leave them consistent and off by 1 minute, and I don't think anybody's going to freak out. Now I don't attribute the unit name here because I want to decouple geometry from designation. So I create a relation to contain the geometry. So now I have ephemeral unit type regiment, name 26 New York, type, and I created a new relation type ephem unit. So we know it's the 26 New York Regiment, and its members consist of these two nodes in the way indicating where the unit was located. And we see that it is a member of Relation 2nd Brigade. And the scrolling is a little fussy if I drop. So let's go get 2nd Brigade. And 2nd Brigade contains 4 ephemeral units, which are all regiments: the 90th Pennsylvania, the 88th Pennsylvania, the 94th New York, and the 26th New York. So we can build up the structure, and this allows us to start keeping track of the units' locations at a point in time. Given that we have a total of 13 maps over the course of the day, we can start building a picture of what happened to the units as the battle continued. And I'm not going to get really deep into that right now, but let me see, what else do I want to say before I close this out? Okay, unit type brigade. I put in the commander. I'm not sure that that data necessarily should be here. It's kind of a problem because the commanders could change during the course even of a battle if someone were killed or wounded. In several cases that did happen at Antietam. On the other hand, a lot of reference material refers to these units by their commander's name rather than by their formal name. So this is Christian's brigade, but it's also the 2nd Brigade, but on the map here you see it's Christian. So one of the tools I have had to use is the order of battle, which is in the back of Sears' book Landscape Turned Red, among other books. I mean, it's not that hard material to get. And that's part of Ricketts Division, which is also 2nd Division, and you see on the map it's labeled Ricketts Division. So it's actually a little tricky to work with this stuff unless you have an order of battle so that you can work out the map between these things. The other thing I want to bring to everyone's attention here is that this is Duryeas Brigade. And so we have the locations of Duryeas' 4 regiments. But what we don't have is their unit designations. We also have a misspelling of Duryea because his name ended with 2 E's, not EA. And that's another matter. There's a thin possibility I am going to be able to figure out which unit was which here, but it's beginning to seem unlikely. So this represents a point where, to a degree, my relation scheme is going to break down because I cannot attribute the correct unit designations But we see here also, we see that arrow, and what we do know from history is that these were deployed in column, not in line. So in other words, the units were facing west to the left, and they marched following that arrow, and they would deploy over here on the flank of the 12th Mass, switch to line formation, and march south. And as near as I can tell from reading various documents relating to this, they would be deployed in line by the time that they reached the cornfield. And the cornfield down here was a key point, a very famous point in the battle. And we do know the names of these units when they are in line facing the cornfield. So what I don't know how to manage right now is that transition from column to line, and what order they marched. And so that's one of the things that I'm thinking about right now is how do we manage this incomplete information. I mean, I've got a lot of references I'm working through. It turns out that the entirety of the official records of the War of the Rebellion are online at a Cornell website. In addition, I found a history of Duryeas Brigade online, and it's in the collection of the New York State Military Museum. I mean, there are lots of resources, and it may be possible to solve this problem. But even though I can solve this specific one, I don't necessarily believe that I can solve it every time it comes up, so I really do need to work out a scheme for this incomplete information. So that sort of thing that I'm fooling with now. The other issue that has come up is that I've shown you relations for brigades and regiments and for the geometry of their position. I actually experimented and entered relations for divisions, which contain brigades, and for the corps, which contain the divisions. Those are uploaded to OHM, but it turns out that for reasons probably relating to the OSM API, you can't get them back out, that it won't go that high in a network of relations. So I'm at a little bit of a loss about that right now. It may be the case that we will do a OHM specific modification to that code in order to facilitate being able to do that. In the meantime, though, I verified that in ID and JOSM both, I cannot get the division back out or the corps. They simply don't see it. Then that's why I think it's probably an API problem, because it's common across the two common editors. What we can do right now, do we know where they are approximately? I can do this query and point at the spot where I know the 13th Massachusetts was lined up, and it will come up here. 13th Massachusetts, relation, name, type, part of 3rd Brigade. So this is evidence that the data is actually in the OHM database. It's just not accessible to us. And so that's pretty much where things are right now. This is what I have been doing since the last time I presented this, which was only a few days ago. And we'll come back on this subject when I have more. In the meantime, we uploaded the revised cemetery burial plots. And we're going to hit refresh. We're going to lose our time and see it reset to 1900. We got pretty close this time. 1862. 1863. The land use goes away because I have no information about crop rotation and about what kind of crop was planted in subsequent years, so I uncertain what to do with some of this. Temporary Union burials go away just like they're supposed to. Temporary Confederate burials go away because they have been moved. And that is much better looking than it was the other day. And so on that note, I think that I shall end